and it's my honor to be the moderator today. And we're very, very honored and grateful to have Senator Wyden here with us today. And when he was first elected, he made a commitment to do a town hall.
No going into my shady past.
We'll stay away from the shady part. But he committed to do a town hall in every county every year. And so it's awesome to have him back here in Wyden County, honoring his commitment to do that. So thank you. We'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. So I've been in Wallowa County almost 3 years now, and I think I know quite a few people, but I'm not seeing any elected officials here today. Would you please introduce yourself? Because you've recently elected, right?
Yeah, 8 days? Yeah, 8 days. Cody Langer from County Commission.
Thank you, Cody. It's good to have you. And John Hillick just walked in, also one of our county commissioners. Anybody else that I'm missing?
Mayor. Gary Hobbs.
I know Gary.
Okay, so Gary will out. Thank you, Gary, for keeping me up. Okay, anybody else that we're missing? I do also want to recognize that Senator Wyden has his chief of staff. That's right. The Senator Wyden has his chief of staff with him here today. Her name is Stacy Sanders. And so it's good to have Stacy with him here with you as well today. All right. Just a couple of ground rules. So you would have had an opportunity to grab a ticket. So I've got several in the basket here. And so the way that we're going to do this is we'll draw 3 tickets at a time. And then I'll read the last 3 numbers. So if those last 3 numbers match with your half of the ticket, then you'll have the opportunity to ask the question. Please keep your questions brief. And then staffers will have microphones and we'll bring those around. So go ahead and wait for the microphone before you start asking your questions so that everybody can hear that if you don't mind.
Did everybody get a ticket that wanted one?
Okay, and then also just a reminder that if you aren't comfortable asking a verbal question, there are comment cards. You can also write a question down on and they'll get that to us to ask as well. So you have both options, either the ticket or the comment card. And then also just want to remind everybody that as an open forum like this, everybody's going to have their own political beliefs and thoughts, and we're all going to be different from each other. So please be respectful. If somebody's asking a question or making a comment that you may not agree with, please just quietly listen and be respectful. That way all of us can have an opportunity to ask questions, to have a dialogue, and that way Senator Wyden can continue having the in-person ones rather than having to go to remote where it's a little bit safer from the crowds. We appreciate you doing here in
It looks
person.
like a dangerous.
All right, with that, I'd like to introduce Senator Wyden. I'm going to read this so that I don't miss anything. Okay, so this is Senator Wyden's 1,174th town hall. That's a lot of town halls. This town hall is part of his commitment, as I mentioned earlier, that he made to Oregonians when he was elected to hold one in every one of Oregon's 36 counties every year. When Senator Wyden is in Washington, D.C., representing us in the United States Senate, he's the ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee and a member of the Senate Committees on Budget, Intelligence, and Energy and Natural Resources. In Oregon, we know Senator Wyden is a senator that really does listen and cares about our issues. So I want to take a minute and just thank Senator Wyden, especially for all the work he's done on rural health care. He sponsored a bill a couple of years ago, actually it was last year, for maternity care in rural Oregon. And that would give some extra funding to the small hospitals that have a struggle keeping their doors open, and especially maternity programs open. So Senator, thank you for that.
Dodge folks.
Very good. And my understanding is you've reintroduced that bill as well, so thank you for that. And so without any further ado, we're gonna give the time for Senator Wyden to make a few comments, and then we'll go to the questions.
Well, I want to make it really short. This is wonderful to have a chance to be with you. We got to town and we saw Becky over at the bookstore, and my wife owns a bookstore as well, so there's a little solidarity right away with bookstores that I know of. And people will want to know what happens in a meeting like this. And somebody came the other day and said, "I hear you give a big speech." I said, "Oh yeah, about 45 minutes or something like that." And his face just got, oh my God. That's not what we do. This is part of a pledge I made. We were choosing our first new United States Senator in 30 years. Problem hearing?
Hold it closer.
How's that? Is that better?
It's good.
So we're choosing our first new United States Senator in 30 years, and nobody really had done anything like this. And I was in a really tough race with Gordon Smith, very handsome, very wealthy, very articulate. And so at one point I just blurted out, "We're going to have town meetings in every county in Oregon." And people in the front row said, "How many counties do we have?" And I said, "We're going to have 36, we're going to have them." And this, to me, is really something that is a special kind of aspect of Oregon. It's now kind of in our DNA to do this. And I think it would be fair to start this by saying we are opening up the next 250 years in America, because I don't think anybody else is doing it. So the first thing I want to say before we get to questions is thank you, Wallowa, for again showing good citizenship. Give your neighbor a big round of applause. Onward.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start the drawing of the tickets for questions. So the first three are numbers ending in 303, 310, and 308. So if you have one of those three numbers, raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone over to you.
Yeah, we'll jump around a little bit. We'll sit, sometimes we'll stand, sometimes just so we can get everybody heard.
Trade mics.
Like that.
Are you guys ready for me?
Yeah.
All right, Senator Wyden, thank you for being here today. I have a question. I don't know if you're here. How can we add workforce housing to the current low-income housing framework?
Well, we've got a bill right now that's become law. How's this? We've got a bill that's become law. It's called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit. It's not enough, though, to tilt it to the levels it's at now. We've got to do more to get it to lower-income people. So what I'm going to do now is take the program, which is a good one, and it's the most extensive program for low-income folks, and tilt it more to people of modest means. That's the real problem. It's just not getting to the people who need it the most. Does that respond to your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And by the way, what we can do when somebody asks a question and I respond, if they want to keep it going, we've got a crowd where we can manage it and a good moderator, so we'll just keep the conversation a conversation, okay?
So this may not be a totally Oregon question, but driving over, the radio was full of Graham Plattner all the time. And while that may be a main problem, it seems like it's also a larger Democratic Party problem. And what can the party do? What is the party doing?
Well, first of all, nobody's really asked me my position, so I'm going to announce it now, okay? Based on
Breaking news.
breaking news. Based on the reporting that's been done thus far, I don't believe this is somebody who ought to run for office. So that's my position. Now we're going to go through.
I agree with you on that.
Now we're going to go. Well, you can tell that I worded it kind of specifically because you don't know all the facts through newspaper articles, but based on enough of them, I'm making that judgment today. Town Oregon, basically starting this afternoon. They have like 4 days, it seems to me, for him to decide that he's not going to run. I gather that he's thinking about doing it, and they've got 5 people under consideration. And it's not an ideal situation, but Susan Collins is not an ideal United States Senator because she's voted so much for the Trump program in the state where you really shouldn't be doing that. So it's going to be a close election, and I think we're going to get a good choice. And by the way, what I do at these meetings, because these are official meetings, we keep most of the politics out because they're official meetings, and do our politics from the website that I have, a special political website, because these are official meetings. But I gave you my opinion, and I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, it just seems like the Democrats are always running around in circles chasing each other. And, apparently we had a good chance to take the Senate, and now it looks like we don't maybe, so.
Well, first of all, we don't have all the specifics about who said what during the kind of, vetting kind of process, but obviously it wasn't handled very well.
Okay, next, did you have a ticket?
I have 10.
Okay, they'll be right here with Mike. He's coming around.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for all the work that you do for us. To me, the most important thing to protect is the vote. And I'd like to know what the Senate is doing between now and November, and what can we do to make the best possible outcome we hope for.
Well, thank you for the nice words. And here's the way the debate over the vote shapes up. And of course, as citizens who are participating in the process, you're here to hear about these issues. And let me try to tell you exactly what's happening. There are going to be two issues coming up. One of them is on this horribly flawed bill called the SAVE Act. Do you know about that? You're reading all about it. This is one of the worst bills I've ever seen. And I don't think the Republican senators want to wreck their career by, in one vote, alienating millions of women from coast to coast. And that's what they would be doing. The provision that is so offensive is essentially if a woman over the years gets divorced or separated, changes their name, all of a sudden, for purposes of the election, they have to go through all this bureaucratic red tape to find records and the like and change their name. I don't think Republican senators are going to want to get near this. Trump keeps pushing them and is now saying he doesn't want to even do the housing bill until we get this done, which is a preposterous position. But he knows that he's in trouble. I mean, just look at what's happened in the last 24 hours. He kept claiming again and again that he had won the conflict with Iran, that the war was over. Now we're back at it again. I'm on the Intelligence Committee. My older child calls it the so-called Intelligence Committee. But remember what he said. He said that the point of his candidacy was that he was going to end forever wars. Remember him saying that? He said it again and again. Now we're in the middle of a forever war because of him. So the SAVE Act is going to be part of this, but I don't think Republican senators are prepared to throw their careers away. A lot of them have done some stupid things, but I don't think they're going to throw their self-interest in the trash can. So that's number one. Number two, and in my view much more serious, is the vote by mail issue. Because Trump is obsessed with getting rid of vote by mail. Do you know how he did it? He had a press conference with Putin, and he said, Putin told me to be against vote by mail. And he is the king of hypocrisy, because he says you shouldn't be able to vote by mail, but when he needs time and everything, he votes by mail. So we are really going to have a full-fledged, knockdown, drag-out fight. And just yesterday, he tried to threaten the states that had vote by mail. Sent letters like to Tobias Reed, our Secretary of State, and he hung in there and said, look, we're not going to be pushed around, we're not going to be bullied, we enforce the laws. We've had, in all the years that we've had vote by mail, we've had a couple of instances which we corrected, but our percentage of error on vote by mail, get this, it's like 0.0000. How many O's is that? It's 4? I think there are 5. 5 O's. So there's virtually no discrepancies and problems and the like, and we are going to go to the mat and fight it, and I think we'll win. American people, particularly during COVID, because I introduced legislation, I'm the first senator to be elected by mail. I'm a Democrat. Who was the second senator to be elected by mail? Take a guess. Jeff Merkley. He's a good man. Somebody said Jeff Merkley. The second United States senator elected by mail was Gordon Smith, a Republican who worked well with me. We had moderate Republicans back in those days. So And so we're gonna fight to keep this. This is in our DNA now. And a lot of people during COVID were coming up to me because I had introduced, after I got elected, a bill to take Oregon vote by mail national. And they would see me in airports and say, thanks for getting your bill passed, because we're gonna get to vote by mail in Missouri or Kansas or Florida. And I'd look and say, thank you for your nice words, but we kind of sort of didn't get our bill passed. It's because of COVID, and your own officials decided that you wouldn't get to vote if we didn't do this. And they said, well, go pass your bill because we won't always have COVID. And I said, well, that's not exactly the idea. But the idea is to make sure that everybody in America can vote by mail, and we're going to stay at it until they can.
Thank you.
Can I add on the voting issue? I'm concerned with the threat of National Guard troops being deployed to voting sites.
Yeah, I am too. And Senator Slotkin of Michigan is already pursuing it on the Armed Services Committee, and I'm supporting her. We're going to make a lot of noise on this. We're going to keep them out. We've got to. We can't risk the vote being tampered with that way. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go on to the next three questions. Ticket last three numbers 261, 306, and 267. You can raise your hand if you've got one of those.
I think that nice person has been waiting. I don't want her arm to fall off.
My oxygen might drop too much.
We're going to give you the next question. We're going to give you the next question.
I had kind of a follow-up question on the housing bill.
Yes.
I heard that that thing passed by enough votes to avoid a veto from President Trump, so it'll go into law anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, but we need to do more. The question that was asked in the back of the room, and it was a very good one, is we have something for low-income housing. It's called LIHTC, Low-Income Housing Tax Credits. But we need to do more to tilt it to the people who are most impoverished. It's hitting more of the people who are above that and don't need it as much as the very poor, and the people who, for all practical purposes, are almost destitute.
Yeah,
it's not right.
I heard yesterday that it was getting to the point that first-time home buyers now, you have to be almost 40 years old before you can afford to buy a home. And that's kind of way out of balance with what it should be. I mean,
this bill, the Republicans were not willing to use the tax code for purposes of this bill. These are just regulations and rules and changes in existing programs like LIHTC. When we get the opportunity to do it, I'm going to use the tax code in housing. And the first thing that we're going to do is the first-time home buyer who buys a house is going to get that tax write-off as they walk out the door.
all right.
Because it's a chance to really show that you can put relief into their pockets, and maybe they have some money, maybe their folks help a little bit, maybe their employer helps a little bit. But we're going to do a lot more for the first-time home buyers starting with that bill.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous for people to have to be working 3 jobs just to survive.
Well, you're being logical, so heaven forbid that logic break out over the United States. But that's the point. That's the
So we have one right over here.
By the way, in case you were wondering who the person is in the back, that's Stacey Sanders. She's arguably one of the most influential healthcare people in the United States. She runs the healthcare issues for the Senate Finance Committee, where I'm the ranking member, and most people are aware of this, but I'm in public health and I'm in public service because of healthcare. I was director of the Grey Panthers for about 7 years when seniors really had virtually nothing. And I continue to believe that healthcare is far and away the biggest and most important issue in America. Because if you don't have your health and you don't have your well-being, you can't do much anything. You can't work, you can't have family, you can't do a lot of the things you want. So Stacey and Stacey's job to make sure that we figure out a way when we have the next challenge to have what everybody else in the Western civilized world, and that is uniform across the board health care. No pressure, Stacey.
We'll run around there after this. My question Mr. Wyden, is what money are you following right now?
Epstein. Is that what you were asking? Yeah. So I decided early on in my career that the history of capturing bad guys, and my dad was a reporter and we were all investigators, and that's what I did on the Gray Panthers, blowing the whistle on the insurance companies. I mean, when I started, an insurance company would come and knock on the door and sell an older person 10 or 12 insurance policies. They take basically all their money. And we fought and we got it changed. And so I've been son of a journalist kid and doing a lot of investigations. And the history in the United States is there is one way to consistently catch bad guys. What are the 3 words that make that up? Follow money. People have been doing their homework. And the mess in the follow the money of Epstein takes your breath away. J.P. Morgan, one of the big 4 Wall Street banks, these are not little people, Malawi or Coos Bay or something, they're the biggest banks. They basically okayed more than 5,000 wire transfers that were sent by Epstein. J.P. Morgan okayed 5,000, wire transfers, over $1 billion. And so in a couple of weeks, and I announced it yesterday morning to give people a sense of the answer to that question, in another couple of weeks I'm going to put out an analysis and an enforcement agenda so that we can catch the big Wall Street banks, because the big 4 Wall Street banks looked the other way for years on end when Epstein was hurting all these kids and women and families and the like. The big banks looked the other way, and even after they kicked Epstein out for purposes of doing direct business, they took all his referrals so that Epstein could keep making money. And we're going to get to the bottom of this, because other countries are way ahead of us in terms of enforcing the rules and safety protections. And we're going to get tough with the Wall Street banks, who I believe were at the heart of allowing this to go on.
Yeah, in the blue shirt there.
Every day I listen to reports of corruption in government, and it's at a point where I can never recall anything like this in my 75 years of living. Our rule of law seems to be not being followed, and I wonder what Congress is doing to stop this corruption.
Well, not enough, and that's why I've made a special effort to focus on these kinds of issues. I just talked about the Epstein situation. A few weeks before that, we beat Trump when he tried to cut mental health by $2 billion. He basically said he wanted money for the billionaires and he wanted his money for the military buildup. And so I went to the floor of the United States Senate and I said to the staff, starting with the Republicans on the staff, I said, everybody ought to plan to check in here for a long time, because I'm going to stay out here until we block this Trump mental health cutting. It's cutting $2 billion. Oregon is 49th out of 50 in terms of mental health services. And I said, we are going to stay here until we end this, because this isn't right. We can't have money for billionaires and tax breaks in the military and cut mental health in a state like mine, by $2 billion. But it's that kind of thing. I mean, normally I say something like, instead of agonizing, we got to go out and organize. I mean, we just basically got to find these examples when you see it. I need you to call me, and then it's my job to follow it up and investigate it and push it, and blow the whistle and organize and use all the tools at my disposal, which is the floor of the Senate and hearings and town hall meetings. I mean, the Republicans don't even do town hall meetings. You guys are at the only town hall meeting I can find in America today, literally. And it's because it will allow Oregon to believe in good government and citizenship. But that's the way I know how to do it, is to push it and recognize that political change doesn't start in a government building and trickle down. It's almost always trickle up. And I just gave you 2 examples with Epstein and mental health of issues that are important to Oregon. Great question. And would you like to follow that up? You want to continue to stay on that question? Because you could spend the whole day on it.
You could spend a lot of time on it.
Wouldn't you call it organized crime?
Pardon me?
Isn't this organized crime at the very top?
No question about it. And what we're doing is we're taking on the biggest issues. Have you noticed how Trump is now trying to make it possible for him never to be audited?
Yeah.
Now, the Republicans don't want to vote for that either. We're trying to force votes on some of these things that are absolutely indefensible. It would be funny if it wasn't so outrageous. The one person in the United States who's exempt from the key financial rules that apply to everybody else, more than 330 million Americans, don't apply to him? Come on.
Well, and to see all these programs being slashed where people that can ill afford losing their benefits, and then seeing people that don't deserve all of this stuff milking the government for every day for their own benefit. That just goes really against the grain.
That's how we won the mental health vote a few weeks ago, is we basically said, we're going to make the case that you're hurting some of the most vulnerable people who have mental health needs in order to have the military build up and help the billionaires. You want to defend that? Come on out and stand with me on the floor of the United States Senate, because I don't think the American people are for that, and we'll have a real discussion. And they dropped it. Now, is he going to come back and do it again? Is he going to try something else? Absolutely. Because this is somebody who just lives for his own kind of pleasure and his own kind of thinking that he can get away with almost anything and get beyond the rule of law. We can show otherwise, and that's what we're trying to do.
In that vein, would you say that, I think this is maybe saying the same thing another way, but it feels like the legislative branch is not doing its job, keeping the executive branch in check, and it just doesn't seem like there's any recourse. It just seems like there's a lot that is happening that's illegal.
Your proposition is correct, and I'll give you another example. So Oregon really depends on international trade, right? Everybody knows that. 1 out of 4 jobs depend on international trade. I got a vote on the floor of the United States Senate to stop Trump's entire trade program. We won like 51-47. Everybody comes up to me, yay, Ron, it's great, we won, we beat Trump on tariffs and trade. And I said, well, not so fast. Just remember, he isn't going to comply. He's not going to go along with it. So what we said is, the very day we got the vote and we beat him on the vote, we said, we'll keep going. So I've introduced legislation to stop him on the refund issue. And he's trying to stonewall that. This is somebody who basically feels that if he can just, throw enough dirt into everybody's eyes, he can just do whatever he wants, and that's why being persistent is so important. But on your basic proposition, is the Congress doing enough? The answer is no. And that's why I want to give you some examples of how I'm spending my time.
Okay, thank you, Senator. We're going to keep going with the tickets. If you have a number ending in 353, 311, or 300.
Can I just mention one other thing, because we're at the point of the meeting where I see faces starting to look kind of discouraged about what's going to happen. I just want to mention, we all did a lot of reading in the last couple of days about the Founding Fathers and the 250th anniversary and the like. So the press asked me what I thought George Washington would say if he was looking at all this. And I think George Washington, or so I said, would disagree with all of the things we're talking about in terms of healthcare and tariffs and the like. And George Washington was a very modest man too, just the opposite of Donald Trump. George Washington didn't want to go say anything to the press and all the rest. But George Washington also would be really happy today, and it's something we ought to think about. George Washington wasn't convinced that the republic that he was creating could survive. He wrote about it, he thought about it, wasn't sure what happened. If George Washington, he was here today, he'd say, protecting that republic was a damn good thing to do.
Okay, Evelyn?
Well, I have a lot of friends who don't pay any attention to what's going on. They can't handle the possibility of meeting controversy. We don't have newspaper anymore that is actually doing the work. I had a friend from Idaho that's telling me that all of their newspapers are going, as well as our local ones. And, well, I just don't think there is enough news for people to know how desperate things are. As far as I'm concerned, this is an eschatological matter. And I can't, I don't know how to convince people that they should care, that they should get involved.
Well, the first thing is to recognize how important the First Amendment is. I mean, talking about the founding fathers in the 250 years, they thought government was interesting and useful, but what they really cared about was the First Amendment. And one of the things that I'm spending my time on is I think both political parties, and I want to emphasize that, both the Democrats and the Republicans, don't do enough to protect the First Amendment and don't do enough to fight censorship. Because anytime the executive branch is Republican, they use it to their advantage. You got the FCC, for example, trying to give Jimmy Kimmel a hard time because Jimmy Kimmel doesn't agree with Trump. But when Biden was president, he gave Republicans a hard time. So I've been saying to both sides of the aisle, let's fight for ways to end this censorship. If somebody is getting censored, they ought to have a remedy. They ought to be able to go to court. So fight with the effort to fight censorship, and then also use the patent laws against the concentration of bigness. The big companies are all gathering and making it harder for you to get information. And then once you get some information, the agencies use that to censor some of what you ought to have. And it was done on healthcare, and it's been done on a variety of things. So I'm fighting on both of those things to try to get you more information, good information.
Well, how? How are we going to get it?
If you have my bill on censorship passed, and the Federal Communications Commission harasses Jimmy Kimmel because they don't like him, Jimmy Kimmel would have a legal right to go to court against the Federal Communications Commission, and if the court found that they were doing it, they would face penalties, and including possible criminal sanctions. I mean, you have to send a message that there's some consequences. And both on censorship and patents, you have a chance to do it. That's what I'm working on.
It just seems that some of us have the news, or we think that we do, at least. Other people say, I'm not interested.
And they have a constitutional right to do that. But right now, Trump's poll numbers are at the lowest level of any president in the sort of last 50 years. And so we have a chance to get our message out. But your friends who don't want to be involved in politics better realize that there's some consequences. We can't afford not to be involved now because our liberty's at stake.
Yes, but they won't believe me when I tell them that.
Tell them to call me. Tell them they'll have to answer to me.
Next ticket.
I'm going to change the subject a little bit. Ron, I want to talk a little bit about rivers. Got a couple questions for you.
Good.
I know you're a lover of rivers. Just want to say thanks for all that
River democracy
stuff. I know you hit a little stone wall last year. This was last year. Hopefully you'll bring that back up.
Coming back.
Okay.
Count on it.
Good. So just recently I've heard that we've got approval to move ahead on rebuilding our Willow Lake Dam, hopefully with the volitional fish passage so the fish can go up or down, and that will hopefully allow us to be able to reintroduce sockeye salmon for the first time since they were extirpated in the early 1900s. So very similar situation as what Idaho has done at Redfish Lake about 25 years ago. They're currently spending millions and millions of dollars every year to try and keep that species alive and keep it going. They've got a great habitat location in central Idaho, very preserved. Those fish have no issues in Idaho, but they're dealing with issues with the lower Snake River dams. So I just saw recently that BPA pulled out of all their funding for our fisheries, both Washington.
Gotta have that money for the billionaires.
And so,
don't want to come up short there.
Of all years, we're dealing with a drought situation. All of our springs Chinook are on the brink of going extinct in so many different drainages, especially with the water situation this year. Dry rivers, they're going to be really suffering. What can we do about the lower Snake River dams and trying to move forward with this?
Great question. I think you've got to start by showing what a success the effort has been with taking out the dams on the Klamath. Everybody fought that. The Klamath communities had fought that. There were conservatives constantly opposing it. And we said, look, what we're doing is not working. We're seeing fish die every which way. And then we got it changed, and now you've seen the Klamath on national TV as the model for what to do to make sure that you bring fish runs back. So I think you start with that, and then you get some allies. I'm happy to work with you. It was sort of the foundation of the river democracy, is that we would lay out some key principles that came from every area. This was an example, folks, of what you're talking about when people feel powerless. And people have always felt powerless on a lot of these natural resource issues, because what happens is Congress people get up in the morning in Washington, D.C. and put on a blue suit and a red tie and decide what you ought to have in terms of environmental treasures. And I said, nope, we're going to do something different. We're going to go and ask every county, all 36 counties, what their priorities are, what they want to do. They went to churches and senior centers and the like, and you all chose your priorities. And I think something like that gets people involved again. And if anything is going to reach some of the people who don't necessarily get involved on issues, is coming up with some new things so that you, when you talk to them, hey, wouldn't you like to be able to sit by a river and catch fish and have a good time with your grandkids? I mean, there are things that we can do about this. This is not something that is foreordained, and that's been my career, and what I've done consistently is try to think new approaches up, and we stay at it until you get them done. And I think you're going to get it done because I can see the determination in your eye. It's kind of, I call it the Rocky factor. And I'm in. Done. Hey, you got a bunch of witnesses, folks. I'm his pal on this.
How do we get the $38 billion back?
$38 billion.
How do we get it back?
Which 38? He spent
the ones they cut on the fisheries.
I see. Yes, the story. Senator Merkley and I are already talking about using the Appropriations Committee and the Finance Committee, because I basically have to come up with the money. Jeff gets to spend it because he's the appropriations person. We're already talking about that. We're going to go after that until we get the money back.
So we could, why don't you go after half of it at least?
Well, here's the story. When we get through the next couple of weeks, we'll have a budget again, and then we'll be able to go line item by line item. But I can just tell you, Jeff and I are determined to get that money back because those fish runs are so important.
Well, we could be supporting you with letters if you knew. I just haven't paid attention. No chieftain, no paper.
Good. We'll get.
Okay.
Tim, where's Tim and Andrew? Let's make sure we've got something. We'll get with Jeff and we'll have a piece of paper that you can hand around about how Oregon senators are determined to get that money back because the fish runs are so important. Okay, good for you. See, now that's a perfect example. This is a gentleman sitting in the front row. He obviously gets outdoors because he's got a good tan and he looks like he catches a lot of fish. And he made a really good argument. And then you said, let's take it the next step. Let's take it the next step. Let's get Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden, 100% of Oregon's United States senators, to go the next step, which is to get a letter to get the money going. And,
right.
And so you know what we'll do?
We'll to write you a letter.
Well, we're going to do more than that. We're going to send you some materials so that you'll get an idea who ought to get the material, and we'll get after it. But the point is, we're seeing this sort of Exhibit A with that last comment. How you move the government. And the founding fathers didn't think it was supposed to be easy because they wanted to protect it. They didn't expect somebody like Donald Trump, which is part of the problem. They thought people felt that there was a rule of law and the like. And what we have to do is just push and push and push until we get it done. But here's an example of something that's in Oregon's DNA, protecting fish runs, and your senators will work to get it fixed, period.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, the next ticket. There's in the back.
Hi. I want to say, first of all, how impressed I am at the range of issues that you seem to be master of and able to respond to.
Well, you know, the thing about it is I wanted to play in the NBA. When I couldn't do it, you know, and I got the scholarship offer from Gonzaga. We got a Gonzaga person. So if I'd gone to Gonzaga, I would have sat on the bench even more than I did at Cal. But I could have shown that a Jewish kid could play with the Jesuits. It made me realize that I had a chance to do public service, and that's what got me with the elderly. And I've learned that you better be prepared. You better come to play every day. That's what we try to do.
Well, having said that, I have a question that kind of is off the wall or off the chart for that, because I get frustrated sometimes that there are issues that I care about, but they go out of the news. You know, they're not immediate for some reason or another. And one, for example, is that I just read a little snippet saying that Social Security is going to be exhausted in 6 years. And as long as I can remember, there have been these statements that are issued about how many years left, how many years left, how many years left. And I wonder who, if anyone, is doing anything. And at the same time, I'm thinking about something like, I hear Citizens United, that decision, decried very often. And indeed, but what's being done? Is anybody taking that up? So.
It got worse a couple of days ago with the Supreme Court decision, which basically said that political people and political committees could get more from the Democratic National Committee or the Republican National Committee or anything like that. So someone like Elon Musk could give one of those committees an enormous sum of money. They're really, you know, exciting young Democrats who are sitting here wondering how in the world they're going to be able to compete with something like that. So we're going to have to be vigorous about this. We're going to have to take on Citizens United. And what the Social Security debate is all about is this is different. One of the reasons that the date has been sped up for Social Security having financial problems is Trump blew up the budget with the $1 trillion in healthcare spending, a big chunk of which will clobber you all. You know, this community is going to get hit on Medicaid like a wrecking ball in the beginning of the year, and Trump did something which I've never seen done before, and it's just an abomination. He made sure that in the rules for dealing with the Medicaid reduction of $1 trillion, that nobody would find out about it until after the election is over. Now just sit on that one for a minute. I've never seen that in all my years with the Grey Panthers and all these seniors groups. Never have we seen that. So you've got a hospital administrator who's sitting there trying to figure out how he hangs on to his providers and supplies and all the rest. And we're going to have to push like there's never. Stacy gets a call from me practically every morning. What are we doing to block these guys? Because they come up with every trick imaginable in order to protect that $1 trillion worth of spending. For example, they have figured out how to take the rules which apply to somebody being eligible for Medicaid and instead make it easy to turn them down because they haven't complied with all the bureaucratic requirements. It's unbelievable. We've never seen anything like this. So the only way you do it is to have really good people in public service like Stacy trying to root it out, and people who are active like yourself who are saying you're not going to sit by and watch this. I mean, Mehmet Oz came to a hearing and he was fighting to get rid of the nursing home rules. And he made the case to me. He said, we don't need all these rules. I said, why not, Dr. Oz? He said, we have algorithms. And I said, let me see if I get this straight. Are you telling me that a woman who's in their 90s and has to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night in a nursing home is going to get taken care of by an algorithm? And he basically went, but I only know one way, which is to have really good people in public service, which is what Stacy's job's about, and people like myself who are trying to, take what they do and run with it and hold people accountable, and have activists like yourselves who are propping all this up for the right reason, because you want accountability. You don't want a country on Social Security where the billionaires get away with paying little or nothing, and a lot of people are just barely trying to figure out how to pay the rent. And Social Security is a complete double standard. If you're an electrician or a nurse, you pay taxes with every single paycheck. That's the way it works for you. If you're a billionaire and you want to pay little or no taxes, what you do is you call up your accountant and your lawyer and say, George or Sally, make sure that I don't take an income this year. I can live off my holdings on all those buildings that I own and the yachts and all the rest. I can borrow because the bank will give me favorable rates. And then when I die, the capital gains matter just gets recalculated again. So the people who have modest means pay taxes with every paycheck. The billionaires pay what they want when they want to. And I have a bill with 24 United States senators saying that we're going to end this. We're going to end buy, borrow, and die when we get the first opportunity. And it was hard to get them to sign up because these are issues everybody knows billionaires. It's hard to get people to sign up, but I think the country's had it with it.
I hope you're right. I hope so.
Okay, we're gonna go back to the tickets.
Oh, but Dan, can I just ask one more thing to add on to that?
Okay.
Look, because, I mean, one of the things about Social Security is that all of us working pay into it.
Right.
But now we're hearing stories of artificial intelligence are going to be, people are going to be losing jobs because AI is going to take over their jobs. And so I'm concerned about a few years down the road, if that does in fact happen, we're hearing it might, that's going to take a whole bunch of people off the payroll, which is going to take a whole lot of money away from Social Security. So am I wrong in that thinking, or is that kind of...
No, you're absolutely right. And one of the things that I'm looking at is whether we ought to start thinking about some taxes on these very large AI companies to have money for training and help for people who are making a transition because a job was lost through no fault of their own. And a couple of Republicans are talking about it too. I think this is one of those issues that people don't want to, again, look like they're just behind the ball. And AI may not be everything that some people are saying, but we have to be ready. And right now, the billionaires are running a pretty good show, and it's seeping into data centers. Senator Merkley and I wrote a letter to the state saying we want to know more about what water costs are going to be, and accessibility, and electric rates, and the like. There are a lot of these consequences that haven't been looked at.
All right, thank you. Now, I know there's lots of follow-up questions that you want to ask. We need to make sure that we're giving people that have the tickets an opportunity. And so we're going to stick with that pretty strictly going forward.